Welcome to the Creator's Journey with the Halfling and the Spaceman. We love talking to various creators about their respective, we're off to a good start, journey into how they became creators. And we are excited to be talking with HB Berlow tonight. HB is author of various short stories and novels. And two of those are series. One of them is the Wichita Chronicles, and the other is and I don't know if you actually say Arkansas.
In Kansas, it's Arkansas. The Ark City, just as a quick FYI, and I know this is going to be later, is the Ark City is short for Arkansas City, Kansas, and that's how we in Kansas pronounce it.
Okay. Okay. Anyway, so thank you for that clarification, and we'll try to keep that straight. But anyway, Ark City Confidential Chronicles.
Ooh,
uh, and he also has experimented with different literary forms, fiction and verse. So he's actually into some poetry, which is cool. And if that's not enough, he's the co-host of the podcast Tikiman and the Viking. So that's an interesting title, and
indeed.
we'll talk a little bit about that. But
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
sure, we really appreciate you taking the time to join us.
No, my pleasure. It's an absolute joy, and it's nice to know that there's the Tiki Man, the Viking, the Halfling, and the Spaceman. I think partnerships go a long way toward creative productivity.
I think so too.
There you
That
go.
is true. That is true.
I think so too. You can, you get to bounce ideas off of each other, and
Absolutely.
and collaborate, and if you have your disagreements, you go into your respective corners
Hmm, hmm,
and
hmm.
try not to hurt each other.
I just pout. I'm too old and too short to do anything else other than pout. That's all I do. Yeah.
Well, Janet, I know if we didn't have the no alcohol policy and I would have known that the Tiki Man was going to be our
I
guest, I
know.
would have fixed myself a zombie for the
There
show.
you
I,
go. Oh, that would have been great, man. That would have been great. Yeah.
I,
Next time. Next
Next
time.
time.
Right, right, right.
there you go. Uh, well, HB, we're just going to dive right in.
Okay.
Tell us a little bit about yourself as you were growing up and sort of your formative years. And then when did you get hit by the writing bug?
Well, for starters, growing up, I grew up in the suburbs of Boston, and if you need me to, I can throw on the Boston accent just for the benefit of your listeners and viewers. Um, but I tell you, the writing bug, so to speak, my apocryphal story that I always tell is it was first grade when we were learning vocabulary, and the teacher would give you, per week, those 10 vocabulary words for you to
Mhm.
learn, right? And of course, in order to verify that you had comprehension of those words, you'd have to put each one into a sentence. And
Yep.
that was pretty cool. I mean, like, I'm using a word to create a sentence.
Yeah.
Um, of course, we were already predisposed. In my house, there were books in every room. I mean, literally every room, including the bathroom. My folks had a book called Jewish Jokes for the John in the bathroom for those people that needed, bathroom reading for finishing their business and so forth. And I'm not going to admit that I remember any of those jokes from 50 plus years ago, so we'll pass over that. But um, I think, given the fact that my house was filled with books, artwork, my parents collected antiques, I think I was predisposed to an artist career of some sort. It just so happens I got sidetracked and spent 43 years in customer service. But along the way, we found our form, as it were.
Mhm. Oh,
Okay. Okay. Well, did you always know that you wanted to be a writer, or was that just something you came up with of late?
Well,
Or
no.
yeah, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Well, yeah, I'm glad you said when I grew up and past tense. Right, right, yeah. Um, Actually, in high school, the writing that I was interested was actually in journalism. That was going to be the mid '70s. We had Woodward and Bernstein. We had All the President's Men, and that was motivational. And I'll tell you, I remember this one bit of trivia. When I got dissuaded from wanting to be a journalist, there was a an investigative reporter in Arizona named Don Bowles, who was killed in a car bomb in 1978. He was investigating the mob. And when I realized that you could either be like Woodward and Bernstein and get accolades and the Pulitzer Prize, or you could be blown up, I said, you know what? I'd rather go some other field. So that's when I went and studied filmmaking and creative writing. That was going to be my career. Who knew back then that you really don't make a career out of that? But Spielberg was out, and George Lucas was out, so you had a dream, right? You have to dream, guys, right?
Sure,
Right.
sure, absolutely.
And we're still dreaming.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. I mean, and hey, it's never too late to make a go at that, you
Eh,
know?
Absolutely,
So you may decide that, oh, I think I'm gonna try that. We'll see what happens. Um,
absolutely. That's
You
how
know,
it works. That's how it
like
should work.
like you said before, if you're a creator, you gotta create. So
Exactly.
who can determine what the actual method or medium is that how you create?
Correct. But I think what's significant is that deep within you that you want to be a creator. I came across a couple of years ago a quote by the Swedish filmmaker Ingmar Bergman, which
Mhm.
I have taken to my heart deeply. He said, "If I don't create, I don't exist."
Mm.
And I think that those of us, yourself, all the people that you interview, those of us who create are blessed with the opportunity to give to others. Yeah, I'm a consumer. I buy things, I eat, we consume, but we're on a different spectrum. We actually make things out of nothing, literally, our imagination and various tools. And I think it is a blessing when you have the desire to create. It's even more of a blessing if you have any skill in it too, and that's something you develop along the way. But I think having the desire to create is important.
Mhm.
Yeah, nothing gets done without getting started.
Exactly,
That,
exactly.
that's absolutely true. But I think sometimes people have that desire, but they also have that fear of failure, and they don't want to they don't want to put themselves out there. They don't want to try. They have this desire, and it's never going to go away because they're afraid to just make that
Hey,
first step.
halfling, not everybody can be Stanley Kubrick, but anybody can be Ed Wood.
There
I'm
you
just
go. There you go. There you go. Well, by the same token, as I've gotten older, I've also gotten to the point where, I don't care. I really don't care. I'm going to do it. Why don't you write this genre because it's popular? Well, I don't write that genre. I'm going to write what I write. I'm going to do the things that I do, and because it fulfills me. That the bottom line is I am being fulfilled by what I'm doing. Now, if I can reach out, if somebody reads a book and goes, that was great. I was able to take a couple of hours out of my day, read that book. You did a great job. That's fantastic. But it has to start with me. I have to be fulfilled by what I'm doing.
Mhm. And that kind of leads me into a question about the genres that you write and your specific interest, because the two series that I mentioned to start with,
Hmm.
they're both they're both what you would call historical fiction,
Exactly.
um, and they're both set. They both have sort of similar settings. I mean, so is that's a particular interest for you because of where you live?
Well, no, let me actually. I was writing contemporary crime fiction. First of all, I think we should go backward. I mentioned earlier I spent 43 years in customer service, which I
Mm.
always used to joke was the reason why I wrote crime fiction. You can't hurt the customers, but you can do away with them in a story. Okay, so that was probably where the crime fiction came from. Now I'd written a couple of contemporary crime fiction pieces. All the while, all the while that I'm writing these, my wife's late uncle lived in a small Kansas town called Arkansas City, which was colloquially referred to as Ark City. And
Mhm.
for years, he was telling me about things like underground tunnels that were originally used for the settlers to hide from natives who were attacking, Indians who were attacking. In the 20s, they were used for moving prohibition hooch. He referred to Ark City as having a nickname of Little Chicago. A lot of the gangsters from Chicago came down to places like Arkansas, Kansas, Oklahoma to hide out. So he's telling me all these stories for years. And I'm thinking to myself, this is writing itself,
Yeah.
you know? So I wrote the first book, Ark City Confidential. And I was
Mm.
down at a writers' conference in Oklahoma City, where I've gone for several years now, and I pitched it. And one publisher said, this is really pretty good, but what's selling right now are series. Now, I
Mm.
had not intended to write a series. This is 2016. On the 2.5 hour drive home from Oklahoma City to Wichita, Kansas, I'm working out two more books in my head. I was careful about my driving, don't worry about that. But the bottom line is, I'd come up with more books in the series. And I was going to go to, I think, 5 books. And then unfortunately, her uncle passed away.
Mm.
And I decided to wrap the series up because I felt I didn't want to go on without him being a part of it.
Mm.
So the last book is almost 1.5 times as long because it's 2 parts that were combined. But as soon as I was done with that, I was like, okay, this is great, but I want to do something that's closer to me. So I came up with the Wichita Chronicles, which is takes place in Wichita, which is where I live, which
Yeah.
is easier to research because I don't have to drive 45 minutes to get down to another city. It has a character that's closer to my disposition, and I was running with it. And the research has been fascinating. I myself am fascinated by what life was like before I
Mm.
was born. Not what happened before I was born, but what life was like. You and I, we go shopping, we make dinner. We know all about that, but how did they do that in the 40s? And you look at those type of things. So the historical fiction has really taken a grasp of my creative soul. Oh wow, that was nasty. um, but I mean, that's what I'm doing. So the first series took place from 1934 to 1954. This series is taking place from 1946 to 1948. And I've actually written book one of another series. We won't get into that right now, folks. We'll talk about that later. But that's taking place in the late 50s moving forward. So I'm changing main characters, I'm changing time periods. It's still within Wichita and the surrounding metro area. There's some aspect of, other towns in it, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, it's just I think the other thing too, from a historical standpoint, when it comes to crime fiction, I don't have to worry about computers. I don't
Mm.
have to worry about technology and forensics. Okay, my crime fiction, the main characters who are trying to solve things are using their brain. They're
Mhm.
using logic. They're using experience and gumption and all of those elements that I find more fascinating than somebody's blood type or fingerprints. Doesn't do it for me. Okay. So,
Okay, I can definitely see that. It's much more of a literally hands-on
right.
approach solving to solving a crime. So I mean I get that.
Oh,
Um, I that just sorry.
No, no, here it comes. Here it
I'm
comes.
sorry.
Here.
No, no. I used to watch. CSI.
Hmm.
I don't know if you're familiar with it or if you ever saw it,
Yep. Yep.
but that put me in mind. What if you took something like CSI and moved it to a period in history, to a,
Hmm.
to a not all that distant history, because I think that, there would be some things that definitely got
I,
lost.
I don't know. I think
But
CSI Stone Age would be fun.
Ooh, yeah, yeah. But no, but by the same token, I mean, there are several, the Sherlock Holmes movies with Robert Downey Jr. They just had Young Sherlock on Amazon Prime. I've seen con- recently made contemporary crime fiction that was set in the 40s or 50s, and you see what kind of scientific aspects they are using.
Mhm.
And to us, they seem primitive, but to them, there was the most modern thing possible. I think for me, I think it's more character driven, is what I'm going for.
Mhm.
You watch CSI, my wife and I watch Criminal Minds, because the notion of profilers and getting into people's heads and trying to figure out why somebody is doing something as a method of finding them was more appealing to me.
Okay.
So
Okay.
that's where I was coming from. I don't think when I was going to school, I was a darn sight better in English than I was in science, folks. I'll tell you that right now. So consequently, when I write crime fiction, it's really for me about the characters, the motivations, and what gets inside people's heads to do something, and what gets inside a main character's head to try to figure it out.
Halfling, what was the name of that series of books about the feudal Japanese detective?
Ooh.
Oh, I can only remember his name, but I cannot remember the series.
Do you remember the author's name?
No, I
If I
don't.
Are
figure
you
it out, I'll email you.
I
now?
don't.
Do you are you familiar with the Brother Cadfael series by Ellis Peters? They made a series. Well, it was who was it? Um, English actor, not Brian Cox. Um, he was a 11th or 12th century English monk. He was an herbalist, but he was a former crusader. Um, Not Brian Blessed. Oh my goodness, I'm going to hate myself for not coming up with that.
Yeah,
But I
I know.
mean, it's just like there have been several TV and literary series of um, detectives from other time periods, and you can tell. You can just read a couple of chapters and you can tell these authors have done immaculate research,
Yes.
because I mean, I'm buying it. I'm buying what
Right.
they're selling.
Right. Right. Hmm.
Well, the author is Laura Joe. Hold on, let me look at the internet again. The internet is the keeper of all wisdom. Um,
Ah, oh,
Laura Joe Rowland.
Roland.
Roland, and
That's right.
she wrote a book, several books in a series about Sano Ichiro,
That's
who
not.
was a Yes, he was a magistrate, and it was really interesting because they do this sort of crime scene stuff in that book, but with the technology of feudal Japan,
Yeah.
so it's an
yeah, yeah.
entirely different thing.
Absolutely, and that's the fascination for me, and I think that's a fascination for a lot of readers. There's too much stuff that's the same. It's just a different character with a different personal trauma in their life.
Mm.
All
Well,
right, well, it's up time for the spaceman.
yes, it
Time
is
for the
time for the
spaceman.
spaceman.
Your bio mentions that you had studied film, and you talked a little bit about that a few minutes ago, but did you ever really pursue it, or did you just get turned off by the fact that it was so difficult to get into? And that's why you do creative writing instead. Or do you have any interest in going back into filmmaking?
Well, I think at the time, let me see, 1984, I was 22 years old, a kid from Massachusetts, living for the past 4 years in Miami, Florida. I think I got sidetracked, and we're going to leave out a lot of the details there. But there were I didn't have quite the social skills in order to make connections, whether it's schmoozing or whether it was reaching out, et cetera, et cetera. So I got lost in all of that. Now that doesn't mean that I haven't taken advantage of my film education in this day and age. Back then, in the early 80s, we were using hand-me-down Arriflex World War II cameras that the photojournal not the the newsmen used. We were filming on a big tape recorder, and that's where we had the clapboard, and our editing was a big editing panel. The thing about filmmaking from 40 years ago to today is the only thing that's changed has been the technology. Shot composition, editing, acting, writing, cinematography, that is still the same. So what have I been doing? I've been using my skills on a low tech basis, using Windows Movie Maker to make my own book trailers. And I've got on my YouTube channel, anywhere from a minute to 2.5 minutes. I get royalty free music online. I take my own photos or videos. Back in the day, it was with a point and shoot camera. Today, it's with your cell phone. Um, so I am doing, some of that to some degree. I've made a few ads, if you will, that are basically mini movies. So, yeah, 40 years later, I'm not, the nominees for the best book trailer by an independent author. No, I mean, I'm not in that level. I don't know. I don't know if I really wanted to be a filmmaker so much as a screenwriter, and I still have a backlog in that storage room back there of about a dozen or half a dozen scripts, film scripts that I wrote back in the day. Um, right now, I've got a backlog of works in progress from 15 or 20 years ago. So, do I go back 15 or 20 years, or do I go back 40 years? What do you think? I'll take I'll take the closest time period. It'll be better for me.
Ah, that's really cool though. You actually wrote some scripts, but you just didn't pursue it. You just
Right,
didn't put it
right,
out there.
right.
Yeah. I understand about you know not having the social skills or the being out there schmoozing, making the
Right,
connections and
right.
so forth, because that is an important component, and a lot of a lot of creators, not just in that field, but even writing books, especially if you really want to make some money at it and you want to get up, like a real publisher, it takes all that and more to to get your books noticed and put out there. So
I don't know if you've encountered this from other writers you've spoken with, but there's so many people that talk about how I can't do the social media, and I don't do well in front of people. And it's like, look, the one thing that I learned a long time ago is you're selling yourself before you're selling your book. Okay.
mhm.
If you can't sell yourself, nobody's going to even take a look at your book. The market is flooded with people now. You have to be able to stand out. You have to be somebody that people notice to go, oh, hey, that person was really interesting. What do they write? It has to start with the person. And if you can't step forward, you're going to be stepping backward.
And they can always talk to us. I mean, we talk to everybody. We
Yeah.
go to conventions, we talk to people.
Yeah, and exactly, that's why you're doing this with the podcasting, because you feel comfortable talking with people, and that's a great tendency. That's something special.
Well, that's one of the reasons why we started the podcast, or one of the an impetus for starting it is that we were banding about the idea for doing a podcast and what could we do a podcast with,
Mhm.
and we came up with you know we know a lot of people. We over our years in fandom, we have developed so many relationships,
Exactly.
and we love, like Spaceman said, we love talking to people. So the idea just kind of clicked that that's what we do. We talk to people. We talk to creators. So, like,
This is sounding so much like deja vu. I'm telling you.
uh, well, let's get back on track here a little bit.
Okay.
What do you find is the most rewarding part about writing, and what's the most challenging part?
Well, I'll go back to that quote by Bergman again. If I don't create, I don't exist. And I feel most comfortable when I'm creating. And that doesn't mean just the writing. I spend a lot of time in the kitchen as well too. I do 99% of all the meals throughout the year. I bake, I make sausages. I haven't purchased a loaf of bread, a bagel, or an English muffin for years. And that's part of it. When the eyes are burnt out from sitting in front of the computer, I'm getting my hands all into dough or stuffing sausages or something of that nature. So creating is an expression. It's a compulsion. So that's my joy. The difficult part is really it's all of the ancillary stuff. I've been blogging for 16 years. We've been having our podcast for nearly 3. I've been going to the same writers conference for 14 years minus COVID. It's the notion that there's two things that are required: patience and persistence. And patience usually means time. And if you don't have that patience, I tell you something, that wears on you. I'm retired now, which means I've got the opportunity to get out more, to go to more cons. I've got a couple of book signings at the end of July in Oklahoma. So the bottom line is that kind of stuff, quote unquote, takes you away from writing. But let's be honest, it's all a part of it. If you're not doing that, what's the point in writing? So you've got to mix the logistical with the creative.
The very same reason that we haul ourselves to conventions every other weekend.
Right, right. Do you really have that many in the Carolinas?
Well, we cover North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia, Tennessee, Georgia. So that's our
Fantastic.
area. So
Fantastic.
we're
Fantastic.
we're going to expand next year. We're going to expand next year. So I'm going to go do at least.
Just go this way and you'll wind up in Kansas.
We can do that. We can do that. Or I can just get on I-40 and head up in California. Well, that
uh,
brings us around to our next question. Now, when we were looking at your online bio,
Yes.
we were discovering that you have a new book coming out.
Yes, I do.
Can you give our listeners out there the elevator pitch for it, or is it ready for that yet?
No, it's ready for that. I mean, can I just do the blurb?
Yeah, do the
oh,
blurb.
I do the
sure.
blurb. Well, first of all, this is volume 4 of the Wichita Chronicles. It's called The Time of Judgment. The Nuremberg trials brought many Nazis to justice, but others slipped through the cracks. Harold Bergman, World War II veteran, Jewish private detective, and a man haunted by the past, is pulled into a hunt for a war criminal rumored to be hiding in the plains of Kansas. Alongside Baron Witherspoon, a local beat cop in Ark City, Kansas, and Alex Gordon, a driven FBI agent who was also Jewish, Harold tracks a monster who traded a uniform for a disguise. But as the trail grows warm, Harold faces a choice that no court can settle. Does he follow the laws of man or the laws of God? With his eyes toward the future, the wedding plans with his fiancée Eileen and their desire for a family, a dark presence from an unresolved case in the form of Dr. Douglas Price Kingsley threatens to undermine the possibility of Harold ever finding happiness. When the past finally catches up, it will be a time of judgment. Mwah, mwah.
Ooh, that sounds cool.
Oh, yes, it does.
And what's interesting is I know from the things that you folks write, the expression or the term multiverse is very popular. Okay. But I, myself, H.B. Berlow, Midwest historical crime fiction author, have created my own multiverse because those two characters that were referenced, Baron Witherspoon, he was the main character from the Ark City Confidential Chronicles, and Alex Gordon appeared in book 3 of that series. So I'm bringing characters back from an old series into this new series. It's my own multiverse.
Yeah.
I just
Yeah.
thought. I just thought. I mean, I figured that it all takes place. My stories all take place in Kansas. There's some degree of, hey, why not? Why is it possible that they could cross each other? And I calculated that it was. So I'm running with it.
Well, it sounds like we're on the lookout now for the Tiki Man cinematic universe.
Well, that's actually part of the podcast. That's not part of the writing. Uh, Tiki Man can be found on a beach sipping a cocktail and listening to Frank Sinatra.
Ooh,
Oh, okay.
All
Okay.
right,
I could dig that.
or the Outer Banks. It's,
Pretty cool.
that's pretty good.
It is pretty cool. All right, Janet, over to you.
Over to the halfling. All right. Speaking of podcasts,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
kind of segues into my next question.
Segway.
So tell us about the podcast. What do you all cover, and how many episodes do you do? How often? All that good stuff. Tell
All
us.
that good stuff. Well, my co-host is a dear friend of mine, William Bryan Johnson. We've known each other, depending upon which one of us you ask. It could be over 20 years or just short of 20 years, but we're both older, so it's tough to remember. But it's been a very long time. Brian had a podcast with another writer years ago, and they got to 25, 30 episodes. They were just talking between themselves, and she didn't want to interview anybody, so they ended it. Now I'd been on his case for a couple of years because I thought that was the next progression for me. I mean, I'd already been blogging for a long time, so I figured that would be the next thing. And we created Tiki Man and the Viking. He writes dark fantasy, which is mythology based. So that's where the Viking comes from. Tiki Man, as you can tell from the shirt, everybody can see the shirt. This is one of about 80 shirts that I do have, but we'll go into that some other time. So we decided we were going to talk about, my goodness, what you folks talk about, creatives and what their process was. Now, the first 10 or so episodes was all about things like editing and world building and things of that nature. And then we started to interview people. And it got on a roll. And we have since interviewed New York Times bestseller Jim Butcher of the Dresden Files, and New York Times bestseller Jenna Blum, who just came out with a new thriller called Murder Your Darlings. We interviewed a friend of mine on Facebook as a former sports editor uh, based in Glasgow, and he also writes sports biographies, but he also writes lighthearted crime fiction. Alex Gordon. So we've been on a roll. We just to yesterday. Yesterday, we just released episode number 71. We usually go twice a month, every other week. Um, we can interview in our local advanced learning library, which has a great AV studio. We can interview via Zoom. For Glasgow, we had to. I mean, we were going to go over there, but it wouldn't have been cost efficient to fly to Glasgow. But we've interviewed while we've been at writers' conferences, and the thing and this is why when I found you folks and you reached out to me, there was such a symbiosis. You two, by virtue of the names, us two, by virtue of the names. You two have different genres that you write. Brian and I have different genres that we write. And the bottom line is, we're both conversational. We both, do the same thing where it's just, general and let's let it flow. And the bottom line is we're just fascinated by people's creativity, their process, their approach to craft. And there's nothing more invigorating than coming out of a great interview and going, "Ah, that was great. I want to just go out and have a cup of coffee with that person. It's not just I want to interview them. I want to get to know them. So that's what we've been doing. We'll actually be meeting at our library tomorrow, which will be in the past by the time you release this. Of course, I get that, but um, uh, to do more recording. We've got we present together at writers conferences. Um, we've done the OWFI, which is the Oklahoma Writers Federation Inc. conference this year, and 2 years ago we'll be presenting at the Tulsa Night Writers Conference in October. There's a Kansas Art Network conference late July that we'll be presenting at. And he's tall, I'm short. We both have beards. Now that's where that's where I appreciate the spaceman and halfling. I'm glad you don't have a beard. Okay, but that's where we differ from you folks because our subtitle is where stories go wild and beards grow wilder. So that's what you guys could never use that subtitle, which I'm grateful for. Appreciate that. But we're so a lot of what you're doing, a lot of what we're doing is completely the same, and it's the enthusiasm and the motivation that we have for other creatives and what they do, and maybe the younger ones, maybe the ones that don't get a lot of publicity, they come on, they do your show, and they get enthused, and they recognize that there's folks like you out there that means there's an audience for them somewhere and they should keep looking. So that's the benefit of what we're both doing with our respective podcasts, which is big thumbs up.
Okay.
All right.
Well, Spaceman.
Now it's time for the most important question
Oh my
of
goodness.
the interview.
Oh my goodness.
Drum roll,
Prepare
please.
yourself.
Tell everybody where they can find out more about you and where they can find the Viking and the Tiki Man.
Tikiman the Viking podcast can be found wherever podcasts are found. We have an RSS feed like you folks. We're on Spotify. Brian has his own YouTube channel which he puts all them on. So, but you basically can go on Spotify, Tiki Man and the Viking podcast. Just search that. As far as myself, my blog is the Tiki Man says ... It can be found at tikiman1962.wordpress.com. I blog every Wednesday, which I've done for the past 16 years. Unless, of course, I'm on vacation, in which case I can't blog because I'm paying attention to what my wife wants to do. That's different, right? And then, of course, all my books are available on Amazon.com. You can basically Google H.B. Berlow, Berlow, and find 3 or 4 pages of me, which is why my wife doesn't do that because she's got me all the time, full time. She doesn't need several pages of me.
Oh,
Well, are any of your books available on audio?
Yes, thank you for asking about that. The first book in the Ark City series was available on audio when my publisher, the Wild Rose Press, decided to do a cross promotion with Audible. That didn't work out too well, so they bailed out. I independently am working with a narrator for the first book of the Wichita Chronicles series, since it's the most recent series. That's called The Day of Calamity, and he happens to be. I just happened to find a narrator who is based here in Wichita, so I've met with him.
Hmm?
It should be out. Well, he should have the files done by the end of July, and then of course I have to review and so forth. But so sometime in August, the first book of the series will be out, and I've made it known to him that if the work goes well and if he's happy with me not beating on him and saying what's going on, and him doing a great job, then he'll be my narrator for all the books in the series. He does a wonderful job, Elijah Alarcon, and I'm thrilled about that. So, yeah, audio is forthcoming. Um,
Okay.
I'm diving in as much as possible. When you're retired and you've got that mindset of learning and doing everything possible, you do everything possible.
Yep. Absolutely. We're there.
you're there. I'm still
Wow.
waiting.
Oh my goodness sakes! Sorry
Yeah.
about that.
No, it's all
It's
right.
not going to be long
It's
for
not
him,
going to be
though.
long. It's not going to
Not
be
going to
long.
be long for him.
And I love my job. So
There you go. There you go.
uh,
I love being a podcaster more, but I still love my job.
right.
Amen on that.
Well, we will make sure to get all that contact information in the show notes so people can find
Thank you.
you,
Thank you.
your books, your podcast, all that good stuff. And we are about to wrap up, so I'm going to thank you again for
Oh,
taking the
absolutely.
time to join us. We have had an absolute blast.
Thanks.
It has been tremendous fun, and just getting to know you and learn about what you're doing and the bread bread baking and the sausage making. I mean,
I'll
that's a treat.
I'll take a photo of tomorrow's sourdough, send it your way so you can see it. By the time you actually get out here to Kansas from the Carolinas, it'll be gone.
I'm
But
sure.
we'll work on some
I'm
kind of arrangement down the road somehow. Okay.
Hey, the con truck has a full tank of gas, Janet.
I'll tell you what, I will let you know when we start heading that way. So you'll time it
Oh,
so none
better
o'clock.
idea. Better idea. Better idea. Better idea. How about when I'm finally getting beyond Kansas and Oklahoma and Missouri and I'm traveling, I come out to the Carolinas, you let me use your kitchen. There you go.
And we also want to thank our audience for joining us today. And we hope that you've been inspired and entertained by today's guest, H.B. Berlow. I
There you
finally
go.
got it right.
There you
Yay.
go. There you go. There you go. That's
And
all
we
I, Spaceman, that's all I got left in life as a name. So I want to hold on to that as long as I can.
and I appreciate that. And this is the Spaceman for the Halfling and the Spaceman podcast. Over and out.
Thanks, guys.